Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
Well, happy Tuesday. Look at that. No cackling, nothing untoward, just straightforward, ready to go, Dan Kent.
We're
How
professional.
Are you?
We're professional.
We're so professional. Yes.
Hey,
I'm in a special studio.
Yeah. What happened to your bookshelf? What happened to your bookshelf?
I'm not home. I'm actually out of state, moving my kid into school. So you have me for just a few minutes before I'm in a pile on the floor, bawling my eyes out.
Where's this? Which school? Where are you at?
So don't anyone stalk my kid. No, I'm kidding. He is in Evanston, Illinois at Northwestern University.
Cool. I've been on that campus. So
gorgeous. It is beautiful. Campus. Yeah. Really, really beautiful. So yeah, we've been moving him in the last couple of days, and today is kind of like the final send off. They have like the ceremonial, like walking through the arches, like onto campus. Yeah. So that's like the final thing this morning. So yeah.
Yeah. And which child is this?
Number two.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So number one, he only went a couple of hours north of us. So I get to see him, with some regularity. And then this kid, he's 6 hours away from me. So it's a little, but it's okay. It just feels different. It's a whole nother state, right? It feels very different. But speaking of new beginnings.
Yes. That was like a top shelf transition right there. That was well done.
Thank you, sir. By the way, he's Dan Kent. I'm Shawna Boren, and this is the MuseCast. And as we roll on in to transition our sermons to our new series, we concluded the Center of Hope this weekend, which coincided with our fall kickoff and all the great things that are going to be happening, classes, one of which Dan is teaching, and just a lot of things going on. So it was a really great day. And Greg capped us off with This Is Us. Mm-hmm. And so we are going to also cap off the series with this MuseCast and then give a little sneak peek about what's to come, because it's all about new beginnings around here today. Yeah. With that, Dan, I think it's sermon time.
Sounds good. Well, hey, I thought I was surprised that this series. Well, I'm already giving commentary. I haven't even given the sermon yet.
It's all right.
Let me. I'm just gonna jump in and summarize it. So yeah, this series, the Center of Hope. We've looked at suffering, and we've looked at, in particular, like how do we get to this state where we can find joy in suffering? And a lot of this, well, I'd say all of this, emerged from some particular acute suffering that Pastor Greg Boyd experienced, and some of the contemplation and insights that he gained from that miserable experience. And so he's talked about, how do we find joy in suffering, and how might we get at that? And so far, for the first 5 weeks, that has 100% been about how do I find joy in suffering, and how do I deal with suffering? How do I find hope in suffering? And but this week he's like, well, when you look at a lot of the text, and we've been looking a lot at Philippians, so many of the times there when the Apostle Paul says, you, he's referring to multiple people, not just an individual. He's saying you, the church at Woodland Hills, is what he's saying, like all of you. And so that raises the question, well, how do we find hope in suffering? How do we become the type of people who can have joy in suffering as a collective body? And so Greg this week was looking at the social kind of elements of all of this, and what's technically called corporate solidarity is what fancy theologians call it. And it's this idea that groups have an entity in the same or in a similar way that an individual is an entity. And so when I have a relationship with my spouse and I enter into covenant with Barbara, it's not just two entities there. There's actually a third entity that's created in that relationship. And so too, a church, as a church comes together to worship, to seek God, to pursue Christ-likeness, making that commitment toward God together creates this entity of togetherness, and that entity is something that the scriptures and the writers of the scriptures and the people who formed the scriptures took very, very seriously, even to the extent that in some senses you might even say that that collective entity that's created in some aspects is more important than the individuals who make up that entity. And so that's sort of what we're looking at. In fact, Greg, taking a sneak peek at Revelation, even noted that these churches that John the apostle is writing to supposedly have an angel that is responsible for that entity, and so yeah, so even on a spiritual level, these entities become really important. And so, like for instance, in Philippians 2:13. When Paul says to work out your salvation in fear and trembling, he's really saying, like, you as a body need to work together to kind of figure this out, and not that you have to earn your salvation, because we already have that. We've been saved. That's a gift from God. But now we have to like live that out. We have to live into it, and we have to make that part of who we are. And so that's sort of the really simple kind of basic kind of concept. And then Greg and there's 1,000 directions Greg could go with this. He decided to just give 3 little things to close. It was a short sermon because we had communion and a lot of kickoff stuff. So he gave us 3 kind of things to kind of focus on to end the sermon. The first one is he said that because of the importance of the corporate whole, because of the it's WHOLE. I think people were thinking that he was talking about HOLE, and it was no, it's the whole, like complete. But he said because of the importance of that collective entity, that means it's really important that we find a local body of believers to connect with, so that we can be a part of one of these corporate wholes. And so finding a Jesus-centered community is really important. And if you can't find one, and if there isn't one, then maybe that's a call for you to start one. So and so that's the first thing. The second thing is because of the importance of this corporate whole, that means that others are very important. And so Greg suggested that we should strive for maturity for the sake of others, because that collective entity is judged by God, and that's something that the angels are judged for, is how does that collective body do. And so when I'm pursuing Christ likeness, I'm not just doing it for me, I'm also doing it for the people in my community. And I think that that's so valuable. In fact, I gave a sermon about a year ago. I think it was the absurdity of judgment, where I talked about similar stuff like this too. And I argued that we do better when we work for other people. And how many times have you seen like parents who will give up smoking because they want to see their kids grow up or their grandkids grow up, where they wouldn't have done it on their own. And I think that that's an indicator that we are actually made to be corporate people, that we are made to be in these communities. Number 3, he said Woodland Hills, that's sort of, he's sort of like and he's done this a few other times too, where he's just sort of found clarity around our tagline, which is learning to love together. And this is another time when this just really, it becomes clear that this is the right tagline for us right now, because it really kind of taps into that corporate activity. We are all learning to love together. We are all together working out our salvation. And so he just sort of gave a nod to that tagline, and I think that that's just so important. And a lot of us were just like, I don't know about this tagline, and I think we've all sort of kind of grown to really appreciate this as sort of a organizing kind of vision of what we are doing here at Woodland Hills Church. So short sermon, short summary. What did you think of the sermon? And
Yeah, I thought it was a great way to conclude the series. Because like you said, up until this point, it's been dealing with our personal suffering and how we deal with that as an individual and how we work out our salvation to see the good
Yeah.
in the things and whatever circumstances that we're in. And so this to me was really perfect that he brought it to the community. And I think so many times when we are as followers, as Jesus lovers, when we're looking at scripture, sometimes we can lose sight of, especially, the culture of, let's just take the New Testament. Like that was very communal.
Mm.
It wasn't really super individual, because that just wasn't, the way that they operated back then. And so I love that we ended the series in this way. And we are truly learning to love together. And it
Mhm.
reminded me of a couple of years ago, kind of in the height of the pandemic. I was talking to a professor who's a professor at a university in another country. And in that particular country, there were some American students, and they observed just how vastly different the American students were responding to the different policies and things put in place because of the pandemic, and the way well, to us, I'm going to say international, but for them, they weren't international students. The American students had a tougher time with doing things, and I'm not judging, I'm just saying this is what the professor said. The American
Yeah.
students had a tougher time doing things that they felt infringed upon their independence. So
Mm.
any kind of policies or mandates and stuff, they really struggled with. Whereas the international students didn't, because they had a greater sense of community and the other and the whole, and recognizing that their actions impacted other people. And so that was just a
Yeah.
fascinating thing. And so I say that to say, I think in America, because we are so independent, our country is all about independence. It is difficult sometimes to see our salvation connected to another person, let alone a whole group of people, a whole body of people, right? And
Yeah.
so I love that we talked about it because it is important. Yes, we do have an individual relationship and walk with the Lord. It starts there, but we can't be who we are to be unless we are connected to others. And I think that's really valuable. So again, I loved the way that we concluded the
Yeah.
sermon, and it was a great encouragement and a great challenge just to
Mhm.
remember, like, to be connected to one another. And I will say, I want to give us a big like woohoo, because we've really, like, through the pandemic, we've really intentionally tried to like make it easier for folks to be connected to us, because we do have
Mhm.
people from all across the world who feel connected to Woodland Hills and feel like this is
Yeah.
like their home. And I love that we have that, And so Greg mentioned Discover Covenant Partnership, a class that's coming up, and the
Yeah.
gathering groups and the MuseCast. We have all of these ways in which we interact with folks who aren't just like in our backyard. And I think that's really cool. I love
Yeah,
it.
that's right. Well, there's a lot there. First of all, yeah, you're right. I mean, the MuseCast sort of like when the pandemic hit, we're like, okay, we need to find more ways to connect with people, and this was part of the reason why we did this, and
Yeah.
how cool is that? But you're absolutely right about the collective kind of communities like around the world that are more collectivist than us, who would be considered individualist, and you can definitely go too far that way too, where
Absolutely.
you lose the self and you lose individuality, and you can get exploited in ways that are really
Mm-hmm.
unholy. But that's certainly not our problem in America. We are, if we have a danger, it's the dangers of individualism,
Mm-hmm.
and we could really benefit a lot in America here from maybe being more connected and moving a little bit more toward that collectivist sort of direction. Barbara always shares this, and I think it really captures just the beauty of it and how different it is. But when she went to Japan in like the aughts 2000s, and it was right after there was a bomb scare in the train
Mm-hmm.
systems, and so what the Japanese government said is that, okay, we are getting rid of all of the trash receptacles throughout the entire train system because that's where the bomb was supposedly going to be placed. So we're just going to get rid of the trash cans. So there's no place to hide a bomb. Well, Barbara's like, well, that's not going to work because there's going to be garbage everywhere, because the government was expecting that the Japanese citizens were going to carry their trash with them all the way home and throw it away at home. And Barbara's like, that's just not going to happen. But it did happen. And she said that the trains were just gorgeous and clean and spotless, and everybody was carrying their little trash with them because the whole was more important than my individual convenience and stuff like that. And I that's always stuck with me as just a really great indicator, both of her expectation, like, well, that's not going to work because there's no way that would work in America. Even when we do have trash receptacles, there's still garbage all over the place. And so it's just seeing like how different that makes people is a really interesting thing.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story, and that fits so perfectly.
Yeah.
I don't think, well, maybe I'm a pessimist, but in this one area,
Yeah,
I don't think that would work here.
No, it wouldn't. No.
I venture to guess that would be a trash heap.
Yes.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, so we just want to encourage you guys to, we're thankful for your connectivity, for your engagement. We hope that you are processing the stuff that you're learning and hearing with others. And if you need help doing that, reach out to us. If you have people like locally, like literally locally around you that you can process stuff with, that's so important to have others that can go alongside, walk alongside you in your faith. It's how we grow. It's how we are challenged. There are things, believe it or not, that I don't see in myself. And I need my brother, Dan, and other brothers and sisters in the community to say, hey, Shawna, have you noticed this? And it's a glorious thing because it's out of love. And it's out of wanting one another to be the most Christ-like that we can be, which is part of the whole point of this whole series is
that's right.
Just becoming more and more Christ-like, having that be the focus. And so we want to, again, thank you for all that you are doing to be engaged, find more ways to plug in and to get connected. I think that's important. And Greg, actually, like you said, Dan, in your summary, kind of gave us a little bit of a sneak peek into what's to come. And so I think this is a perfect place to do that. Like, what can you, is that iced coffee again?
No, this is warm coffee. So.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, see, crisis averted. We're back on good terms.
Well, and I have there's a story to this really quick, and it's related to my sermon from the last week, and because I'm trying to find new ways to cut down on sugar.
Yeah.
Because it's a big dumb addiction, and so what I realized is that like if I do iced coffee, I do like 2 ounces of this vanilla flavoring, which is sugar basically, but it's vanilla flavored sugar. And then I can handle the iced coffee. What I found out is that if I do hot coffee with the foaming machine, I don't need that much. I can do less than an ounce. So like 65-70% less sugar by doing it hot, and I put it in the little crystal glass, and so there's like a tactile sort of pleasure to it.
Nice.
So just finding ways to take that anti-fragility teaching and run with it.
Absolutely. Walking through your labyrinth, you're facing it, Dan. I'm so proud of you.
That's right.
Y'all continue to pray for Dan. He's getting close. Yes. I drink my coffee black.
You're
Dan's
amazing.
Getting close, y'all. So
you're amazing. What's it like? What's it like being that close to the glory of God? I mean,
I know. Come along. There's room for all.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right. Yeah. Well, so we're heading into the Revelation series, which will be titled what, Dan?
The whole series is the unveiling, and the first sub-series is, I think it's going to be called Do Not Be Afraid. Okay. And I really like that sub-series title because I think when people think of Revelation, they think of scary things. And it's fascinating that the first thing that the angel says to John is do not be afraid. Mm-hmm. And there's some terrifying things in there. and yet that's the call, is do not be afraid. So we're going to look at some of the fundamentals of what this book is and why it's so strange, and how do you even approach a book like this. But more than that, it really requires a type of hearing. It some of the weirdness of it, it's good because it forces us to, because when we listen to people and when we read things, we tend to interpret it through our own lens. And so a lot of times we end up projecting our own assumptions and stuff into the things that we read. Apocalyptic writing is so out there, it's hard to do that. It sort of arrests our self-projections and stuff, and it forces us to really listen to what the author is saying. And I think that's part of the beauty of it. And so we're going to look at a little bit at some of that, like how do you let the text unveil itself, and how do you get out of the way to let the text do that? And so I think that would be my kind of teaser for it. Now, now that I said all that, Greg will probably go a totally different direction, and we won't even do any of that stuff. But that's the way it is. So
that's the beauty of it all. All right.
That's
so
right.
For Nugget time, we are going to it's kind of a choose your own adventure, Dan. And this will be a quick nugget. It was a quick sermon, quick MuseCast. It's not quick, shortened,
yes,
compact, yeah. But still really full and really good. Yes. So choose your own adventure for your nugget. Like, do you want to again put a bow on the center of hope, or do you want to again dangle out a little revelation?
Yeah, I actually have just a thought that I was thinking while we were talking, and I guess I'll leave this as a nugget. Part of, because I have a lot of people in my life who I love, who struggle with social anxiety, and it's interesting. I was thinking like in the collectivist kind of cultures that I've done anything with, and the people who I know who are from those communities, social anxiety is not a thing. It's I mean, because you do belong, you're there, you're connected, there's nothing to do. I mean, you're already part of the group, and so I think that social anxiety largely is related to this individualism, where I have to earn my place, and I have to prove myself, and I have to earn my worthiness, because there's no collective guarantee there. And so I just think that if people struggle with social anxiety, finding a church that has this sort of aspiration toward corporate solidarity, where we're striving to have that bond, that covenant bond, could be a really good for that. That could be a good part of how you wrestle through that social anxiety. So that's what I was thinking about as we were kind of talking through, and I guess that would be my nugget.
I like it. Good job, Dan. My nugget is, I'm going to just unabashedly, unashamedly slip on my engagement pastor hat and just say, let us take to heart Greg's sermon. This is us. And if Woodland Hills is the place where you feel like you theologically belong, we hear that a ton. Where you feel theologically rooted and grounded, awesome. But don't just keep that for yourself. Find ways, discover ways in which you can engage with others. That's part of what we do here on the MuseCast. We talk more about Sunday sermon, and we bring out different facets of it, and we ask questions, and then we chat with you guys when the show airs. And so that's a form of engagement, and just, kind of working through the things that we're learning. There are a ton of classes coming up. You guys heard A Confident Humility is going to be starting up. Discover Covenant Partnership. That's the more formalized way of belonging to Woodland Hills, will be starting up. Discover the Kingdom is another class that'll be starting up. And that's really that's kind of our theology, foundation. So that's a good one. There's a ton of groups. There are gathering groups that discuss the sermon every week, and support groups, and things for students and things for young adults. So hop on the website and find something that will help you to get connected to other folks, if Woodland Hills is your place. This is us. And so let's be us, and let's grow together, and let's learn to be more Christ-like together. Let's learn to love together.
That's right. What a great wrap up. That was a great wrap up to the show.
It's So good. So good. Tune in. Revelation is coming. It's going to be good. That's going to be a lot of stuff to unpack and to discuss. So we can't wait to catch you guys next week for that when we continue the conversation. Have an awesome rest of your week, you guys. Take care.